Hey everybody, welcome to the 1% Improvement Podcast. My name is Derek.
And my name is Haris.
Today we're going to talk a little bit about my favorite topic. Should you be a generalist or a specialist? The pros and cons, the happy stuff, the sad stuff, the good stuff, the bad stuff, everything about it.
But maybe you can share why you chose this topic.
Did I choose this topic?
Yeah, you chose this
did?
topic.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think with all things, it's just one of the random thoughts that I have. Every now and then I get random thoughts, right? And I think choosing to be a generalist or a specialist is a path that everyone needs to decide at some point in their career. Do you want to focus and go balls deep into, being a lawyer, an accountant, a doctor? Or do you want to just learn a few things? Because everyone has 24 hours a day, right? So 1 hour spent on learning something else is 1 hour away from your main craft. So do you want to go deep and be very good, let's say an accountant? Or do you want to, let's say, spend 1 hour every day to learn something else, like learn coding as an accountant? That's what got me thinking.
Looks like it's quite dark. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but what about yourself? What's your thoughts on this? But before that, can you tell me what's your thoughts on what's a generalist and what's a specialist?
Actually, yeah. So, from my perspective, right, I think a generalist is someone who picks up many types of different skills that might or might not be related. And then for like a specialist, right, you choose one skill that you just want to hone. So for example, right, maybe in the context of coding. So as a specialist, you learn coding as much as you can. And then even in coding itself, there's different types of like what kind of skills. You want to be a mobile app developer, web developer, and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
So like for me, a specialist is like someone who really goes deep into one specific niche. So for example, for me, I used to be a Flutter developer. I was crazy about Flutter. So I just knew mobile app development. I knew about Flutter framework. And then like to a point where people recognize like my sharing of knowledge, and maybe, and then I was awarded the Google Developer Expert, and that is a title where you give knowledge, you create content on a very specific like Google technology, which was Flutter.
Right.
That's what I think is like specialist. But for generalists, I would say personally, also I think it's like running a business, right? When you just started, you need to learn sales, marketing, and product.
So which one do you think is? What do you think? Which one is better now?
I'm going to say that it really depends, right? Because I've been to both. I've been to a specialist, I've been as a business. So for me, I transitioned to be a specialist, to be a generalist, because I was a Flutter developer.
You mean you transitioned from a specialist to a generalist?
From a specialist, sorry.
Okay.
I was I've transitioned from a specialist to a generalist. Right. And why I chose that, right, is because being a generalist, in my opinion, has no salary ceiling. Meaning that you have various skills that you can combine them, for example, in a business, right? Yeah. And you can create a lot of value. While you're in a specialist, right, there's always a cap. Because most of the time, I believe, a specialist person usually is an employee. Maybe I'm wrong.
Which one is easier, do you think?
Which one is easier? I would say, to be honest, specialist. Because specialist, you
so?
just learn one skill.
You think being a surgeon is easy?
No, of course not. But is it easier than being someone who is able to learn multiple skills?
Well, it depends.
Right? It depends, right?
On how well you are.
Yeah,
in those
but personally,
skills,
for me, I think it's easier because when you're a specialist, you're very focused on learning one specific thing. I'm not saying surgeon is like hard, but it's like, no, I'm not. I'm not saying being a surgeon is easy, but at least you're focused on just one thing, being like a good surgeon.
That's
being
your
a
one
good
job,
Flutter
right?
developer.
That's your
just
one job.
have one job. But as a generalist, like, right, you have to connect. I believe, especially running a business, you have to connect your sales skills.
I'm gonna, because okay, so for me, right, I started off my career by really understanding what's my why behind doing everything that I do, right?
Understand.
And being in the society that we are in today, especially the Asian community, we are compensated very well. We are pause for a while.
Take your time, man.
We are, what I would say, society today encourages specialists more than generalists. And what do I mean by that? If you look at it, right, as a baby, when you come up into the world, I would say most of the time you learn a broad range of things, a lot of things. You learn from colors to animals to plants. You learn about every single thing, languages, everything. Learn to sing, learn to dance. You just do yourself, right? And as you progress in the high school, you start getting segments of what to learn: biology, science, mathematics, blah blah blah. You learn still a very broad range of things. But as you age further, and you look at the workforce, right? The workforce and employers are generally looking for employees who are able to deliver their job to the best ability, and they will just pay you good money for it, right? And that's why universities are designed in this way, where they hone in on the one skill set, so that the whoever hiring partner who takes their bet on you has the maximum chance of you being a good hire, so that their boss don't scold them for, hey, why are you hiring someone bad, right? So if let's say you came up with a degree in mathematics, right, and a HR person took a bet on you and said that, hey, Haris graduated with a degree in mathematics, and you turn out to be bad, at least the hiring partner can say that, hey, he went to the right university, he had everything lined up for him. He should be good in theory, right? So I think that's why I feel the society today, we're just very focused on choosing specialists instead of generalists. Because generalists, there's no level of assurance to say that this guy is good in what he has. It's very hard to convey that this guy is good. Okay, he's good in mathematics, he's good in singing, he's good in astrology, he's good at coding, right? But what exactly am I hiring him for? And in most jobs today, specialist roles especially, and most roles today are specialist related, people hire specialists.
So do you define specialist to choosing one type of
That's correct, yes. Being a specialist,
subject,
it just means that you're spending all your time on that one thing. And I think it's just very traditional education wants you to focus on one thing, because that's what you're being paid for, right? Of course, I'm not here to say that being a specialist or a generalist is better. In fact, even at the end of this video, I'm not going to give an answer on this, because it really depends, right? But I personally grew up in a household where we believe that my upbringing believed that being a specialist is very important. My parents wanted me, I think it's very typical Asian parents, you heard of it, right? Indian parents or Chinese parents, they're always like either a doctor, accountant, lawyer, or engineer.
Yeah.
That's about it, right? Which are all very specialist professions. They are like top of the top, like, hey, you need to be very good, have to get certifications, be chartered accountant, that kind of thing.
Actually, why do you think they want us
Because
to be in that path?
you can command a level of influence as a professional. You are a professional is fundamentally someone who has put in the effort and the time to go through regulatory bodies and finished everything to show that they have a certain level of competence. If you're a doctor, no one can take it away from you. Does that make sense? And I think what parents want, or what people want, is they want that level of respect. They want that level of assurance that their kid is somebody in
So it's mainly for themselves.
I wouldn't say it's for themselves, but parents or people in general are risk averse, and they don't want to see you die, right? They love you. They want to see you survive. They want to see you thrive. And in their definition of thriving, it's being somebody, right? And like you mentioned, right, it's a lot easier to become, let's say, I'm not saying being a dentist or a surgeon is easy, right? But what I'm trying to say here is there's a clear path to being a respected doctor. It's very clear. Go to med school for 5 years, do your housemanship for 2 years, start practicing. I'm not saying it's easy. It's not hard. I'm sorry. It's hard. Let me correct that. It's hard. It's not easy to be a doctor. Definitely, 100%. I'm not saying it's easy, right? But it's a clear path. It's not complex. It's a clear path. Straight. Do this, pop. You achieve your goal, right? Whereas the path of a polymath, by the way, is just someone who is good at multiple things. The path of a generalist, it's often very, very diverse, and it's easy to sway in the wrong direction. Right. What's the wrong direction, you ask me? I don't want to say learning sociology is a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. But what if someone spent too much of their time learning more fluffy subjects that cannot earn them a living?
So fluffy subjects are like
things that people don't hire for, right? Like gender studies, for example. You go to university for a 3-year degree in gender studies, which I believe there are probably some use cases to that, but what's the demand for it, right? No one's going to hire you because you have a gender studies degree, right? So it depends, right? And for example, being a specialist earns you that level of respect. If you're a doctor, you can't really go wrong. You're a doctor now, you have a good job, you're respected, you spend 7 years in this domain, you know science, you know how to save lives. It can't go wrong. It's safe and it's clear. But whereas the other path, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to learn marketing, I want to learn how to do sales, I want to learn copywriting, I want to learn deal making. Everything I just mentioned in the past 10 seconds, very fluffy. Right? What exactly does that mean to be able to do business, right? Is someone going to hire you, right? So people think, and especially coming from communities where most people are employees, they think about getting hired, not think about building a business, which is very different. Someone who's building a business will want to hire someone with the right skills. That's why generalists, in my opinion, suit more to be leaders. You think about your visionaries like Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, these people, they are generalists by nature.
But we'll say like, for Elon Musk, right? He was learning physics, right? He started.
Just continue.
He started with learning a specialist or is it generalist kind of degree?
Physics is quite general.
General, right?
Yeah. Physics is not. What's focus is mechanical engineering.
Right.
What's focus is chemical engineering, right?
Yeah, I guess I agree that this.
And then he went
like
into coding after that. He went to the fintech after that, right? Right? Which I think is quite general, right? Because if you adopted the mindset of a specialist, you would have been, hey, my degree is in physics, so I should do something physics related to go even deeper into physics. But he did not do that.
Exactly.
Right. So I mean, he's just one example,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And at the same time, to also give context that doctors is, I would say, paid. Well, depends on the country actually. I mean, I don't know if you notice, but in the UK where the healthcare is free for all of the citizens there, being a doctor there is not a lucrative job.
It still earns you a comfortable living though.
I don't know comfortable. Depends, right?
It depends on how you define, right? But upper tier lah.
I mean, if I'm not wrong from like my research in terms of like being a doctor in the UK, I don't think that you are able to live, but not at a point where you can live like freely, because as a doctor you need to also go through like why I know about this, because Ali Abdal is a good case of like he went through the specialist route, right? Being like a doctor, really studied really hard, he really became a doctor in the UK system, right? But then he realized that you have a cap in terms of.
No, I think right now you're comparing between a business owner. He is now a creator / business owner. You're comparing a business owner with a doctor, which is not a fair comparison. Right now, I'm comparing a doctor. Right now, I'm talking in the world of specialists.
Right.
Being a doctor is the top of the tier already.
Right.
In the world of specialists are accountants, lawyers, doctors, engineers. What else? I think I mentioned most of it, right? Software engineers are those as well, and I think doctors in the realm of specialists are at the top already, right? But if you want to compare them, a doctor to a
business owner,
it's a different ballgame,
right?
Altogether,
I mean,
right?
that is the reason why we are talking about specialists versus generalists, right?
Correct.
It's because like I guess mainly why I want to talk about like salary wise is because people assume that being a specialist is the go-to way to earn the most money, which is technically true because it is a path.
No, it's not the most money. The safest way, with the highest probability way. And I mentioned, for me, I didn't mention earn the most money.
Yeah.
I mentioned to earn a comfortable life.
Right?
Which means that the likelihood of you living comfortably as a respected citizen and productive citizen in the country is way higher than you doing a gender studies or business, which has a 99% rate of failure, right?
Exactly.
So that's why it's a safer path. But of course, there's like different spectrums to it. Of course, being so you can continue on your point.
I guess like it depends on also how risk key you are. So for those who want a safe path,
that's correct.
Like the specialist way is already a proven path that you can't really go wrong if you really work very hard.
Yes.
Right. But I believe now I see a trend of a lot more people who don't want to be on that specialist path.
Correct.
And maybe I spend a lot of time in content creation.
Yes.
A lot of people who are in this specialist path wants to explore being a content creator. Definitely. And the thing is that, do you think being a content creator is a specialist, or is it like a generalist?
No, I think a content creator is definitely a generalist because you need to have a wide array of skills to be a good content creator, from editing to storytelling to designing your thumbnails and your copy, engaging with your audiences, doing fan events, setting up your account, SEO. There's a lot of things that goes into building your own content. But what
if you're just a content creator who just, sell your service in terms of like a freelancer? Do you think a freelancer...
A content creator and a freelancer are two different things. A content creator monetizes on the eyeballs they get.
Yeah.
But a freelancer monetizes on the service they provide.
So freelancers are mainly like...
Specialists, yes.
Specialists, right?
So if you look at, I think this is the cash flow quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki. I think one of his books in the past, I've forgotten the details, but there's like a few quadrants. There's employees, there's self-employed, there's business, and there's investors, right? So I would say on the left-hand side, you have ES, which is employees and self-employed.
Self-employed, right.
Yep. So for people on the left-hand side, they are fundamentally specialists. They are the ones
Right.
doing the work,
Okay.
which is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Which is completely fine, and it's I guess the safer way to go, because if I'm a coder right now, I would prefer to stay within my comfort zone to just provide coding services. If you ask a coder to start a business, he has to now learn taxes, learn marketing,
True.
learn team management,
Yep.
learn HR, gotta learn so many different things. It's like, you know what, I'd rather just focus on doing what I'm good at, which is coding.
Yeah. So do you think that the majority are people who generally are okay with specialists?
But I wouldn't say, honestly, I wouldn't say specialists don't make money, right? If you look
No,
at
no, of
but
course they make money.
shit tons, shit tons. If you look at singers,
But do you think it's competitive?
yes, it is competitive.
right?
It is. Everything's competitive, right?
In a
But yes,
sense, but
the,
it's more,
okay,
right?
what you're trying to say
Mm.
is the disparity between
Yeah.
number one and number two is very big,
Yes.
right? The world's fastest sprinter, he is a specialist, right? And the second is also a specialist, but the disparity though is huge.
Yeah.
Right? A football player is a specialist.
Correct.
They need to play football every single day. They can't be playing football, then ping pong, then badminton. They
Yeah.
can't.
Right.
So it depends on the skills as well, I think.
Right. So do you think, as yourself, right, are you specialist or generalist?
So
or
I, growing up, I've always been a generalist all my life. So I've always lived a double identity because my family always wanted me to specialize. Since young, I was raised with the mindset to be a specialist in one thing, and that's why I chose to go into a degree. I only had a few options: is it accounting, doctor, lawyer? I think that's about it.
Did they
right.
literally tell you the options?
Literally, no, they
Hinted.
don't really do it that way, right?
Right.
Because my parents are a bit more modern now.
Yeah.
But it's more like whenever I give them a suggestion on what I want to do,
Ah.
they're like, no, why wouldn't you consider being a doctor instead or a
Right.
dentist instead, right?
Ah.
So it's quite standard. And I remember going into a minor argument when I first started my business. I told my parents about it, right? And I think they mentioned about we had this talk. I was having a dilemma. I was talking to my parents. Should I be a specialist or a generalist, right? And I think my dad was very, very, very against me being a generalist. He was like, who's going to hire you? Right? And I know it's coming from a place of love and a place of care. But I guess as an individual, as an adult, you get to decide for yourself what's the path you want to go. There's always pros and cons. You got to weigh the pros and cons before you take
So
the leap.
what made you jump to like?
Since young, I was a generalist.
Generalist.
I've always enjoyed learning new things. I just cannot sit there and just do the same thing every day. I want to be able to be flexible. And I think the people that I respect the most are not people who are good in one domain. People who I respect the most are people who can excel in multiple domains and they are decently good in everything.
Right.
They understand the big ideas across different domains. And that's the thing that really gets me hooked. I'm like, wow, I want to be like that. Since young, I've always thought that being that way is a lot more interesting than, being, let's say, very good at one thing but have zero knowledge in everything else.
Right.
Which is another thing I want to talk about. Instead of choosing one thing I would always recommend people is to be a T-shaped generalist.
Yep.
You know what's that?
So T-shape, if I'm not wrong, is that you have a certain knowledge of different skills.
Yep.
For example, social media, marketing, creating content,
correct.
right? Sales. But the thing is that you're okay. But out of that skills, there's
Yep.
one skill that you're damn good at.
That's correct.
Yeah, so
so
that's
so
key
instead
skills.
of so it's good, it's correct. In fact, conventional wisdom about being a specialist is the, I guess, probability wise the safest path to go about things, right? Learn on one thing and be very good. But now what I'm saying is, okay, good, continue doing that. All I'm saying is add a line on top of it, make it a T-shape, so you know at least the big ideas across a broader range of items lah.
Okay.
That's what.
So, okay.
Continue lah. T-shape, yeah.
Yeah, so you talk about like T-shape, right? I know there's another shape. I forgot what's the other shape.
There's many shapes.
Right.
Basically, it all falls within the ballpark of having one line. The line, the horizontal line is how many things you kind of know about. So I know a little bit of coding, I know a bit of digital marketing, I know a bit of pitching, I know a bit of fundraising, I know a little bit of accounting, for example. That's your line.
But do you have like a skill that you want to be good at, or you're just like okay with being above average in terms of the other like?
So yeah, which brings us to the next point. So in the 1500s, back in the days, back in ancient times, right?
Yeah.
They came about the concept of a Renaissance man. You know what's a Renaissance man? So a Renaissance man is someone who is good in a very broad array of items. It's literally famous hundreds of years ago already. This is the idea. A Renaissance man is basically a polymath. Right. So
and
it's
they
always
were highly like
yes. It used to be the thing back in the days. There's even a name for it, a Renaissance man, right? So
Renaissance man.
it's something that I aspire to be in my life, right? It's just that due to industrial revolution, where people are now focused on, hey, I'm paying you to do this one thing, don't think about anything else, which I understand. Employers need people like that, right? But back in the days of Renaissance, everything was about inventions, innovations, exploring new things. So back then, the incentives were very different from the incentives that we have today, right? So, one example from back in the days, from the 1500s, is Leonardo da Vinci. Right? So this guy, he has many interests: anatomy, astrology, mathematics. It's a lot. I think I can't remember the list, but engineering, literature, inventions, printing. There's so many things, right? So I think back in the days, and he was the one who came up with what was that?
The painting.
The Mona Lisa painting,
Yeah,
right? He was the one who came up with Mona Lisa, right? So I'm like,
he has so many interests.
he's not an artist. He's a guy with many interests, and that's what gave him the ability to stand out in this domain.
Exactly. So, like, do you think in this current like economy and era, is it
Depends on what you want to do. If you want to be a surgeon, I'm not going to hire a generalist surgeon. If someone's going to operate on me, I'm going to make damn sure that he is.
guy is specializes?
That's correct. If I'm going to hire a lawyer, I want to make sure my lawyer. I'm going to hire an accountant.
So it depends on the industry that you're in, or like
no,
your
no,
interest?
that's correct. I think for me, if you want to be employed, you need to be a specialist.
Okay.
Right? So for me, right, if I hire people, I want to hire specialists to do the work.
Right.
I'd rather have a specialist to do that, right? Generalists can be my general managers.
Correct.
My managers need to be able to know how to understand what's going on with the specialists, but they probably can't do it as good as the specialist. Like, for example, like me, right? I can code, I understand coding, I can do marketing, I can do a lot of things, design, UI, UX, pitching, I can do a lot of things, right? But at the end of the day, what helps me really survive in this world of entrepreneurship, because my friends always ask me, doing business is so hard, how do you do business, right? I'm like, you need to leverage resources that you have, right? And if you are somebody, let's say you are an accountant, for example, you want to start an accounting firm, you know nothing about tech, about marketing, about anything else, and you hire people like that, you're going to struggle. For me, I think I'm very good when it comes to maximizing whatever little I have about different domains about things.
Right.
And then using that to manage people, getting the experts to do it for me.
But do you need to have some knowledge of who you want to hire, or
It's
who?
better to have. I wouldn't say you need, right? By sheer luck, you could hire someone who's very good and genuine to you, but probability-wise tells you that you won't be able to efficiently manage that. Those people. You don't need anything, right? You can just you pay more money, then you get better people, right? You don't need it. Let's say if I'm rich today, I don't need to know this, because I just hire the best people in the world, right?
Yeah, that's true. I guess like with the amount of resource that you
That's
have,
correct. With the amount of
it
resource that
depends,
I have, that most people
Yeah.
today, the average Joe out there trying to run a business, you have no choice but to learn a little bit about everything.
Right.
Unless you are born into fortune, born with a silver spoon, as they call it, right? Then people like this, they have the ability to just hire consultants to just give them the best ideas and everything, right?
Right,
Yeah.
with consultants. But do you think that, someone who just, graduated from, university, right? What do you think is something that they should do to understand whether they are a specialist or generalist? Maybe I can start.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so maybe I can start on, how you can start with whether you want to be a specialist or generalist. To be honest, right, just start. There isn't much of a quiz or personality type that you can quiz that can help you, because I thought I want to be a specialist in terms of being a Flutter developer, and I did, and I think I did pretty well. I mean, how I know I did well is because the Google Developer Group gave me a title, Google Developer Expert. That title is not a generalist title. It's a title for someone who knows very specific in terms of the technology. Then after that, I think a bit about whether I want to do this for the rest of my life. From the experience, I said no, because I want to become big. I need to become big, right? So then I realized that Flutter is not going to make me big. It's going to make me, a person who people care about. Like, oh, Haris is an expert in Flutter. Anything, just go to him. But I want to be more than that, right? That's why I chose to become a generalist. So there isn't much of like a test. It's more towards like, let me try it out and see what happens. And I'm not saying you should try it out for a few days, a few months. Probably it's going to take a few years. For me, personally. Because maybe for you, for Derek, right, it's like you're able to have an understanding of who you are as a person since young. You know you're a generalist. You know that you're going to be a generalist like for a very long
I
time.
was forced to come to the
come to
realization
a
because
realization.
I've never been able to sit down and focus as good as that specialist kid. I've always been
Right.
second.
Right.
I've never really to be first. It takes exponentially more effort to be in
Exponentially.
top 3 or
Yeah,
something like
yeah.
that, right? So I've never really been first because first is just
Exactly.
so far away. I've always
It
been
is.
second, third,
Yeah.
fourth, whatever. I've
Yeah.
never been first. So I knew already that's because I don't have the conviction that a number one person has. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I'm right now in my adulthood, I understand that fundamentally that's me as a person. So if I go into the game and climb the corporate ladder and compete with everyone else in this domain, it's going to be hard for me to win because I'm a guy with multiple interests in so many different things. So, I just sat down and asked myself, how can I maximize this interest of mine, this very natural baseline nature of myself to explore? And I think the only way for me now, right, is to do business.
Right. So it's just that.
If I'm an employee, I'm probably going to be not a very good employee, honestly,
Yeah.
because I just can't. I just keep jumping around every day. Like
Right.
every 10 seconds, you see me jumping on a different tab, doing different things really. Because that's how my brain works best. It's the
Right.
most, and you can see in one day I can probably do 10x what an average employee can do. That's because I'm able to have that range.
So you're able to have like different skills in a sense.
Yes,
To
correct.
maximize.
Manage, lead,
Right.
spearhead, whatever. I focus on the big ideas within different domains. I mean, of course, I'm not saying I'm the best, but I know that this is what the best of the best do, and I'm
Right.
just trying to follow that track.
Right. So it's just more towards like since young you probably have an idea of like you don't want to like do something.
I actually don't have an idea. I just know that I was never able to win.
No, yeah. You have an idea that you don't want to be someone.
Not that
who's-
I don't want to. I can't.
You can't.
Yeah,
Okay.
rationally I can't.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not I don't want to. I want to win. I want to win. Yeah. It's just that I keep jumping around.
Yeah. I mean, you will win eventually, right?
I will
If
win.
you-
I
yeah,
know
yeah.
right now. That's why
Yeah.
I'm a generalist, but I'm focusing my generalization thing on one business.
On
So
that, right.
I know I'm going to win in the business.
Yeah. So I guess like everybody has their own way of like figuring things out, and I feel that it is really up to you which kind of path you want to be, right? Because for me, I've done two paths, right? Specialization and then now generalist. And for me, I prefer being a general person, right? Because like I love learning,
Okay.
right? I mean, Flutter is amazing, but it's like I want to learn how to sell, how to market,
Okay,
how to
okay.
create product.
One thing, right? I want to say is I agree with you here on this point, but I
Yeah.
want to point out one thing that I disagree with just now that you
Which
mentioned.
is?
You mentioned that there's an earning potential to being a specialist, right?
Yep.
That's something I kind of disagree with, because
Explain.
if you're a good specialist,
Yep.
you will be able to still make money,
Of
a lot
course.
of money.
Yeah,
Think of
yeah.
the top athletes in the world.
Exactly.
Think of singers,
Yep.
actors. Think
But
of
who hires these
surgeons.
athletes?
Think of, wait
Okay.
up. Think of surgeons, for example,
Yeah.
right? Now, growing wealth, getting that wealth is not a problem. Growing wealth, right? Who said that being a generalist means you can be rich? No one
I'm
said
not
that,
saying
right?
Yeah,
Exactly,
I'm not
right?
saying that. I'm not
So,
saying yeah.
Being rich is just a matter of how do you manage your funds, right? To become rich, to go from 0 to 1 is very different from going from 1 to a million, right? So going rich is just a process of managing your funds and putting in investment funds or investing in startups or hiring or you can hire a generalist to run the CEO of your company, right?
Exactly.
So growing wealth is different.
Yep.
So I want to say that,
Definitely.
being
No,
a specialist
I'm
doesn't
not-
mean that's a cap. You can still earn a lot of money as a
Of course.
specialist.
Yeah, it's just that like having a company versus a specialist.
Well, I would say a software engineer in, let's say, Facebook, for example, is
Correct.
making more than a small-time shop owner over
business.
here in
No,
Malaysia.
like I want to go to the extreme of
Exactly. So you want to compare the winners, you got to compare the winners.
Yeah, of course. So it's
Exactly.
like if you want to be the highest paying of whoever, right? Highest paying, I think personally, any employee who's in sales, right? They are the most high paying because they bring in the money, and then commissions wise, I mean, they are the rainmakers, right?
Okay.
In my perspective, like they are bringing a lot of money to the company, so they're being paid a lot, right? Doesn't matter.
Sales is still a specialist skill.
It is no. I'm not saying So okay, what I'm trying to say is that you still have a cap. Imagine you're a person, a company who can hire 10 specialists who are like 9 out of 10.
Why can't this specialist hire 10 specialists too?
Yeah, of course.
You
But
see,
it's
you get where I'm
skills.
coming from?
but
It's a matter of how you manage your funds.
Of course.
So nothing to do with generalist or specialist. Because the specialist, just now you mentioned about who's going to hire the athletes, right?
Yeah.
Why can't the specialist hire his own athletes?
because they don't want to.
They
Most-
can.
they
It's a
can,
matter
course
of
they
it's a
can.
matter of cash management, right? I know singers. There's a few. Jackson Wang, for example, he owns his own label.
Yeah.
For example.
Or Dr. Dre, he's one.
Yeah, exactly, right? So
yeah.
specialists can also do it. It's just how you manage your funds.
Yeah. Okay, management fund is one, but I would say that for them, right, they're still in the same industry. In terms of like Jackson Wang is in music industry.
But he could, of course, invest in startups. Like for example,
of course, definitely.
What's
I'm
his
not
name?
saying,
Some of the singers invest in some of the billionaire singers. I forgot their names. The basketball, what's the big dude, the basketball guy?
Forgot Shaq.
Ah,
Yeah.
he invested in startups as well.
Yeah.
He invests in stocks and REITs and real estate as well, right?
Definitely, yeah. So I'm not like, I would say these are people a bit extreme outliers as well, because they are the people who have the money and they met people and their investment grew a lot.
Okay.
But like in terms of like, because they are like 0.1% or 0.01%, that kind of
I
thing,
think you're
right?
comparing between self-employed and businessmen, right? Because right now, specialists can still hire people.
Of course,
Right.
I understand that. I
Correct.
agree. But it's just that, do they want to, right? They can.
They can.
Some of them did, some of
Yes.
them don't, right?
Yes.
So I would say that.
So this argument doesn't apply to specialists because they can.
Yeah.
It's not that they cannot, they can.
Yeah. So I mean.
So they can make more money if they wanted to.
Yeah,
they can.
but do they? Like in
It's up to the interest really.
Exactly.
So but it's not that they can't, you see. They can.
I understand. So
That's it.
I guess I mean, let's agree to disagree, right? In a sense that, like, I would say that either way, if you are at the top, whether you're a specialist or generalist, you can still make a lot of money. But we can argue who makes the most money, because a specialist can hire more specialists and still make
Exactly.
ton of
So
money,
I think being if you're very good at your craft, let's say you're top tier marketeer,
Yep.
top tier logo designer, you can still
Yep.
make a lot of money.
Of course. So at the same time, right, I would say in business as well, this is from Alex from Mozilla, there's different types of entrepreneurs, and he said it's a spectrum. One is a person who is more generalized, meaning that they don't really have a specific skill they're very good at, but they love running businesses.
Yep.
So, and the other spectrum is that there's this one person who is a self-employed business, right,
Yep.
who's the best, like, I don't know, leather making wallet.
Yep.
People pay millions of dollars for him to create
Yep.
leather making wallet versus a business owner who knows the industry, but he has no skill in building like a wallet, or crafting wallets, but he hire people with the wallets. So these two kind of businesses, do you agree that?
No, I do agree. So you're talking about the way you run your business.
Businesses, right? Yeah.
Right? But the specialist can run a business as well.
Of course, yes.
So it's not.
Yep.
So right now,
There's no,
I completely agree with you when you
Yeah.
talk about how you run your business, either as a self-employed individual, right, where you are the product,
Exactly.
right, or you're running a business where it can grow and scale in itself.
Exactly.
KFC, where's
Yep.
the
Yep.
chef, where's the cook, where's the founder?
No.
Mercedes-Benz, everyone's dead, but it's
Yep.
still running,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's running a business,
itself,
right?
right?
But the specialist can still run a business as well.
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So it's two different things. One is about the
Definitely.
skills, and one is about business mindset.
Yep.
It's two different things. So
But,
a generalist doesn't mean you have business mindset. I know generalists who are working as general managers in companies, right?
Yes.
They can still be employed as well,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So don't confuse between being a businessman and being a generalist. It's two different things.
Being a business. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, because in terms of like specialists and generalists, there's
Yes.
you can start your own or you can be employed, because
Yes.
there's a role for
That's
almost
correct. You can be a
everyone.
specialist and also a businessman and achieve those
Exactly.
great heights.
Right. So like, in the terms of like specialists, especially in tech companies, right? I don't know if you heard of like software engineers. They have two paths when they just started. This is from my friend's experience. There's the individual contributor and there's the manager role, right? So this is where you actually chose. You're gonna choose whether you want to be a specialist, which means you just code all the way. Doesn't mean like you're a bad coder or whatever. It's just you love coding, right? Or you want to be a manager where you become a tech lead, tech manager, and then like doing more managerial stuff.
Yes.
But in that whole setting, right, which do you think will have a higher salary potential, a manager or individual contributor? So maybe that's what I'm trying to say, lah.
Right.
Yeah. Because even for individual,
But with a general manager, there's still an earning cap.
yeah, lah, of course, definitely.
The only
But,
thing that doesn't have a cap is business.
of course, yeah.
Right, so
But
like,
I'm
let's
talking
talk
about,
let's talk specifically about like being a
Company.
manager within a both are employees, right?
Yes,
within a company,
correct,
one is a
yes.
manager and one is an individual contributor, right?
Correct. Yeah.
It depends on the thing, you see, because if the individual contributor is the only person in the world who can do it, he's gonna pay better,
Right.
right? Does LeBron James get paid more, or does his manager get paid more? I don't know,
Actually, I don't
but
know.
that's a good question, right? Because he's one of the best in the world, and
Of course.
you can compare that, lah. What's the
So-
salary of his manager?
Right. I'm not sure, but the manager also manage other players, right?
Yeah.
So technically,
Correct.
mathematically, the manager has more. I don't
think
know.
it depends.
That's
On,
the thing,
it depends.
right?
I think it really
Yeah,
depends.
yeah,
It really-
depends
but
lah.
I would say that it depends lah. It depends because if at the end of the day, if everything boils down towards just being a manager, then everyone in the world want to be a manager. Who's going to do the work?
That is true,
Right?
actually.
So it's a matter of supply and demand. When there's no one there to do the work, the person doing the work will get paid more.
Right.
It's a matter of supply and demand.
Right. So it really depends on.
It
where
really
you
depends
are.
on where you are, the company status, who you are, for example, your industry, the size of the project.
So do you think, like, as a young person after graduating from university,
Yeah.
is it?
I
If I
think-
want to be a manager,
I think there's only one thing. It's a matter of how much of a risk do you want to take. I think if you want to be a manager, it's hard for you to go in as a specialist only. You need to be some form of either a generalist or a T-shaped specialist.
right?
It's very difficult for you to be manager just as a specialist, because if you want to be a manager and all you know is, let's say, front end, you're gonna manage back end developers as well, and you're gonna
Right.
you're
That's
gonna
true,
struggle.
that's true.
So you need to be somewhat T-shaped.
So managers do have to have experience.
Yes, I
Right.
think so. Because if you don't have experience, it's just the blind leading the blind.
Right. And
Right.
actually, that is true.
Yeah.
So do you think that as a young person, figuring out, because I guess especially in generalists, especially for young people, I believe they have a crisis because they don't know, they are figuring out who they are. Maybe for you, you already figure out since young already, like, what you want to do, right? But for some people like me, there was once where I was struggling to, like, do I want to be a software engineer or do I want to be like a business owner? I was struggling like what path to choose, right? Because there's an actual like thing, because if you look at social media, a lot of people quit their jobs. Even though it's high paying jobs, they be like, is this for me? Right, that kind of thing. So like,
I've also seen a lot of people who quit their jobs and went back to jobs because they realized that doing their own thing isn't for them, right?
yeah. But
So
I
it
think
depends.
it's not a bad thing as well, because
So
you're
but
exploring.
I think exploring is fundamentally the right thing to do. You should always explore your interests, right? At the end of the day, what do you choose to do? Because I've seen a lot of people leave their jobs, get into depression, trying to do their own business, and go back to their jobs.
Right.
Do I want that for them? Probably not. Honestly, no. But I would say exploring is the only way you can find out. Because if you fundamentally don't explore, you're very limited to the kind of worldviews or experiences or
That's
stories
true.
that you can tell.
That's
So
true.
always explore, even if it makes you go sad. It's just, do you have the mental tenacity to deal with it?
Yep.
Do you have the risk? Are you able to take those risks? If you can take the risk, then you should just do it anyways. If you can't, then no choice. You have to feed your family or whatever. No choice, then just
Yeah,
just have
it
to
really depends
do what
on
you
your
need.
situation exactly.
those your real life situations matter more than what your
What you
interests
think,
are.
yeah.
If your real world situation allows, take the risk, do
That
it,
is true.
explore.
Then do you think they should take the?
Yeah, 40 minutes already.
Okay.
Okay, we're talking about exploring. Yes.
So when do you think is the best time to explore?
Ooh, good question, man.
Right.
I
Maybe
think
I can share, or you want to share?
go
Up
ahead.
to you.
I mean, I have an opinion on this, but
Alright,
you can
right.
share first.
So like, I think for me, right, the best time to explore, right, in all honesty, right, is university lah. Yeah, because university, even though you're specializing in a skill, right, you have, I believe lah.
Okay.
I've never been to university, but I believe
Right.
it's similar to polytechnic because
Okay.
you're specializing in one skill as well. Is that you have time. You have time because you have 3 months break. you have-
University doesn't mean you're special in one skill.
Oh yeah, okay. It depends on your degree,
Yeah,
right?
depends on degree,
So
correct.
if you learn
Just,
psychology, very generalist,
Yeah.
right?
Is it?
No, psychology is very general. Trust me,
Right,
I was in
because
psychology.
the only thing that I was thinking general was like more like business degree,
Yeah, business
something like
admin
that.
or whatever.
Information systems, you know.
Physics is
yeah.
also kind of general.
Yeah,
right?
generalist.
Math, to be honest, math I think is also quite general.
Okay.
It is,
we
it is.
can
I
talk
believe
about
it is,
Okay,
yeah.
we can talk about
Opinion,
that, but it's
but-
fine. But
but-
anyways, I would say it's when you're young. I wouldn't say uni lah, right?
Because I think uni you have a level.
not
of
everyone goes to uni,
maturity.
man.
Yeah, I know.
So
But
it's that
if you
it's that
do,
age.
if you do.
It's that age. It's that age.
It's the age that
when
like-
you're young.
Yeah, because I believe on average people go to college, university, right? I
Because
don't go.
That's sad for those who don't go to unis watching
lah,
this, man.
Yeah, but like, no, the thing is that if you're able to go to university, full-time university, do have that, and I believe most people do. But I also talk to those who haven't, because I
No, I would say uni is out of the equation for this question.
Really?
I would say
Why?
it's an age thing. Nothing to do uni or not. If you're young, you should explore,
yeah lah.
regardless if you go to uni or not.
But it's like I would say,
So I would say if you are young, you don't have. I don't care about
Define-
age.
define age.
Okay, I don't care about university. It's out of the consideration. For me, it's do you have bills to pay? Do you have time? Do you have an interest in the thing that you want to do? You have these 3 things, then you should just do it.
so
Right? If you don't have
if
to
you-
pay for your parents or your family,
Right.
and no one's relying on you to survive. That's a very, very big kind of gift that the heavens gave you already. Because
Yeah.
some people who are struggling, even if they're in university or whatnot, right? If they're struggling and let's say touch wood, their mom is bedridden, they need to take care of their mom every single day. So you and I, we are blessed in this
That's true.
aspect,
Actually,
right? Our
that's true.
family is healthy.
Yep.
We don't need to fork in hundreds of thousands to go and just pay their bills for that. So we are
Right.
blessed in this way, and we need to maximize and capitalize it.
Mm.
Number two. So that itself is a very big point, right? Number two, do you have time, right? Because maybe some people, they are tied down for whatever reason, they don't have time, right? They have to work or whatever, right? But
Yep.
fundamentally, the first point is the most important. Like, if you don't have financial burden,
Mm.
you should just explore already.
Explore as much as you can.
Explore already. With or without universities, just go out there and try different things.
Right.
And give yourself a period of time to explore without the expectation of making an income. Because the moment you expect an income, there's a limit to what you can explore, right? And this is why I would say a lot of my friends, when we first graduated, when I was 22, 23 years old, I would say almost 50% of my friends told me, I want to do my business. Literally, almost 50% of my friend groups tell me they want to do business. Myself, one of them, right? And what happened was, over time, right now, I think probably less than 10% of my circle does business, probably 5%. Though the others who are taking over their parents' business, I'm not going to consider them because that's taking over, right? People who come out, go incomeless and start their own thing from scratch, very, 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 very freaking small minority, right?
Yep.
And what about all those, you ask me, the other 49% who said they wanted to do business, right?
Yep.
So what happens is life comes into the way. When 23, 24, 25, you get a job, your income starts going up a little bit more, right? Then your spending starts going up. Start getting a girlfriend, start thinking of getting married, start buying a car, start buying a house, and now before you know it, you have liabilities of like 4 to 5 to 6,000 ringgit every month. You literally can't quit your job right now. And if you quit your job right now, number two, what about peer pressure? Your friends around you, hey bro, I just bought this for my girlfriend, bro, and you're like, oh shit, I'm here hustling on my small business. Emotionally, mentally, it's going to be so much more difficult starting a business when you're 28 years old versus when you're like 21 years old. Because at 28 years old, you have all this. I don't know about Singapore. Singapore is maybe a bit different because Singapore, you have to go for NS and all that. So the absolute numbers are different, but I would say roughly yes, people with working experience, if you quit in the future, it's going to be way more difficult. Let's say you're making, let's say 15K now. Let's say you're 35 years old man, right? 15K, 20K salary, let's say lah, right? For you to give that up, it means give that up to run your business that's making zero today, right? That means that every single month, your opportunity cost is 15K.
Yep.
Does that make sense? But if you start it when you're 23 years old as a fresh grad making 3K, every single month your opportunity cost is 3K. So that's the exact same mindset I had. I was like, okay, I'm 22 years old. Even though back then I had my first job, I had a 5K offer, but I still didn't do it. So I told myself, okay, that's my opportunity cost. And that if I can run a business and try my best, the first task I got to do to myself is try and cover at least 2.5K, something like that. So if I can cover that, at least I know I covered the bare minimum. Right, and I'm like, okay, I can take this risk.
Yeah. Yes, I think. I think my comment on like saying you should start in university might be a bit deaf, meaning that I wasn't empathetic towards other people who has situations during uni where they cannot focus because they have other issues around them. So apologize on that. And I would say that yes, I'm blessed that in terms of like the freedom to explore was like something that I was blessed with, right?
Yes.
My parents are okay, and and they're okay with me staying at home and helping me, support me as well, right? So, and I would say that it really depends on your situation, and I would say business is something that's very, very hard. For me, it's an irrational belief to me that I like business or like. I have tech recruiters telling me, hey, Haris, you have Flutter skills. You can literally earn more money right now. Why are you still in business? To be honest, right, I have no reason. I don't know. Like, I always liked running a business, even if it was not earning me enough money. But I liked it. Right? I've worked on my business that didn't earn as much when I was a software developer longer than I was a software developer, right? And that is something that I'm blessed with because, like you mentioned, my situation is pretty blessed because my parents are okay, and then I keep on continue working on business for
honestly,
2
I think
years.
it takes irrational people to build businesses. Honestly, because in the early days of business, it's just really rough. Any rational, sane human being would have taken the easier way out, which is I have a specialist skill right now that can pay me instantly. So that's another difference between a specialist and a generalist. A specialist gets paid now, fast. You have a skill, you can sell your skill and just get paid already. So it's very tempting to go and sell your time for the skill that you're good at. Which is not wrong, by the way, just to make it clear, it's not wrong. So it's just a path that you want.
Correct. It's just that when you want to go to the generalist path, generally, your business has to do well.
Can I ask you a
In a
question?
sense,
Can I ask you a question?
yeah.
In today's market, which
Yeah.
one do you think is more in demand? Which one does the market need more today?
That's actually a very good
Okay,
question.
let me just add one more assumption. Assume that when I say generalist, I'm not talking about someone who knows a little bit about everything.
Yeah.
I'm talking about people who are decently good. So let's rate a skill, okay? Let's talk about any skill, right?
Tech.
Generalist, no, let's just say in general, any industry,
yeah.
right? Generalist means you are 3 to 4 out of 10 across a range of, let's say, 6, 7
That low,
skills.
meh?
Hear me
Okay.
out, right? And then specialist, you're an 8 out of 10 in one skill, and 0 out of 10 in everything, or 1 out of 10 in everything.
In demand right now.
Which one is more in demand? Someone who's able to connect the dots.
If you give me that context,
That's correct, yeah.
honestly, it's a no-brainer, to be honest, to me. Specialist.
So
Right.
An 8 out of 10 specialist will trump a 3 out of 10 generalist across an array of 6 skills.
Across an array of 6 skills.
Yeah. So
Okay,
one
six.
is 1 skill, another one is 6
Okay.
skills, but 3 out
So
of 10.
let's do the math, right?
Yeah.
Let's do the math. It's pretty simple, right? So a generalist only has 1 skill, others 0. So the other
A
5.
specialist only has 1 skill.
Yeah. I'm saying 1 skill, and then you're comparing with like 6 skills, right?
Yes.
So
by a generalist.
yeah, generalist, right? So generalist has 1 skill, which is 8. So in total, 8. That's it.
Right.
But for generalist, you have 6 skills.
Sorry, 8 and then 1, 1, 1. Everything else is like 1, not 0. Yeah.
Okay, not 0, just 1.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. I mean,
So-
you can put 0 also if you want to, but okay,
No,
let's
but
put 1. Let's put 1.
realistically, it's not
Okay,
0.
okay.
You know a bit of everything.
Okay, so a specialist has 8 in one particular skill, and then the rest of the 5 skills
One.
is 1.
So that's
So
13.
that's 13, right? But for the generalist, let's say 3. Or
Yeah, 3,
right?
3 out of
In
10
all
over
of
6
skill.
skills. That's almost the same.
Ah,
Right?
almost
Let's
the
just say
same,
it's
right?
almost the same. Which one is more in demand? It's the same actually. In fact, it's no, it's still more. Generalist adds up to a bit more.
Yeah,
Yeah,
3
but-
times
but
6 is 18.
Correct. So 18 over 13, right?
13.
Which is more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you say which one is in demand?
Yeah.
So because I believe that right now, in the current era, generally, the specialist will still win, right? Because
No,
like,
which one is more in demand?
more in demand?
Yeah.
Short term? Can I say short term?
Right now, yeah.
Right now? I still say specialist.
Specialist.
Yeah.
Mm.
Do you know why?
Why?
Because it's a simple binary thing. When people want to hire, right, I believe people will just want to see someone who specializes into a particular skill, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So you can agree or disagree.
Okay, I would say I agree with what you're saying. So let me just start there first. I agree. However, I do see a huge premium that I would place on a candidate who's able to learn up very fast other different skills. So that I think that's one factor that we didn't put into the conversation. How fast can this person
Right.
learn different skills? And the
Right.
missing point here is the generalist. Most of the time, the generalist can learn faster because
Of
this guy
course,
knows
definitely.
and is interested fundamentally. What's he doing on the weekends, right? Is he's learning other things. He's always exploring and always trying to be better and different.
Assumption lah.
Most of the time, that's what I realize. Generalists.
I can argue that the specialist will also be interested, but not in other domains. In his domain, so he's
Correct.
going from an 8 to 9
Correct.
to even a 10.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. That's why
Yeah.
I'm saying the generalist will grow faster in other things as well.
Right. Yeah, it
I
kind
mean,
of
in
multiplier
my
lah.
use case now, it's like I want to find someone because oftentimes now in most of our operations, right, a lot of things are tangled up. Like a lot of things relate to each other.
Yes, of course,
So
definitely.
I think maybe it's my own issue that we
Yeah.
have not segregated or compartmentalized the business in like
Different-
very refactored manners where
Correct,
everything
correct.
is like different, not unrelated,
Yep.
like departments, right?
Yep.
So for me now, everything's somewhat linked. So if my team is able to just tell me that, okay, even though that's a copywriting issue, I got it. Even though that's a
Right.
graphic design, I got it. Even though that's a coding issue, I got it, right?
So
It's not
essentially-
easy,
yeah,
right? But
it's not
someone
as
who's resourceful and able to learn up very fast, that is a talent that I'll put in significant amounts of.
I agree.
Yeah.
And the thing that I wanted to answer that question, right, is that if you have a skill called adaptability, you will win forever.
That's correct.
Because you can adapt.
Learning how to learn, basically, right?
Learning how to learn, right? So like, for example, right, I was learning psychology, and then like I literally tell to myself, psychology is something that I'm going to, be good at or even be top 1%, right? No. So I adapted to the situation, quit, and found the in-demand skill they're going to pay me a lot of money, tech. Then when I run a business, like, I need to learn marketing. I wasn't good at sales, so I didn't know about sales, about marketing. I do a lot of content. I know how things works, funnels, whatever, right? So like, then slowly it became like, now I'm starting to learn about business skills, right? Marketing, creating a product and all of that. So I would say that like it really depends on who you are as a person. To be honest,
if I can point out one more benefit
Yeah.
of being a generalist, right?
Yeah.
And just to add on to your point,
Exactly.
right? It's being a generalist allows you to fundamentally be a lot more diversified in your skills and your career path. Specialist skills, let's say you're an expert in this one technology or in this one tool, in whatever, right? When a new technology comes by, you literally lose your job. So imagine if you're 9.5 out of 10 in this one skill, and this skill becomes redundant, what happens to you? You're practically useless. Not let's say useless, you're at intern level.
But I will still disagree on that because, right, as a specialist, you can be adaptable as well. For example, right, being a web developer back 10 years ago, you're not coding. You're just dragging and dropping. If you remember Fireworks, I used to code I was quite young. So for those who understand what Fireworks is, good, you're damn old. But basically what Fireworks is created by Adobe actually. And then it's a web drag and drop kind of website. It's very like 2000s kind of like vibe.
Okay, so if you use that skill, you would be redundant now.
You'll be redundant now, but I've met a lead engineer in a very, very famous fintech company called Visa. Okay. He have coded in Fireworks and he's a tech lead in Visa doing as a software engineer.
How is it
He's
correlate?
adaptable. No, his skill is not being an engineer. His skill was being adaptable. So he learned throughout 20 years, right, of web development, of software engineering. He just keep on learning. But he's a specialist.
Correct. So let's put adaptability aside for this conversation because we're going to hold it as a constant variable.
Yes.
Let's say a specialist and a generalist, they're both equally adaptable. My point is, specialist now has his 9.5 out of 10 skill, right? It's out of the market. He's dead. Out. No more because it's replaced, right?
Right.
He has to find a new career, start from zero. The other guy who is a 3-4 out of 10, the thing that he's focusing on is let's say and by the way, I'm a bigger fan of a T-shaped generalist than a generalist in general. A T-shaped generalist meaning you are good in one thing, right? You are 6 out of 10 in one thing and 3 out of 10 in everything else,
right? Rather
than just 3 out of 10 across the board, right? I'm more focused on that's what I say. If anything, if you're watching this and you get one thing out of this video is be a T-shaped generalist, right? The best of both worlds. So I always prefer that, right? So so in this case, let's say you're 6 out of 10 in one skill, and that one skill then now becomes redundant because of whatever external circumstances, right? Then you can, assuming adaptability is a constant variable, now you can start in your second skill and start from 3 instead of from 0. Does that make sense? And 3 versus 0 is like 1 to 2 to 3 solid years.
Right. So
that's one point.
Like, I think you don't really die immediately when your job suddenly is redundant.
Oh, you'd be surprised.
I don't know, because like from what
You heard of layoffs?
Yeah, of course I heard of layoffs. God dang it. But that doesn't equate to there isn't a demand. It's just that sometimes layoffs is because company not doing well.
Okay, let me give you another example. If you're a specialist, right? Helping one company with their internal tools, their internal processes, their internal engines, their internal assets.
Right.
Okay? And this particular company fires you. What are you going to do? Your skill set is useless everywhere else in the world.
So would you say that...
Does that make sense? So I would say I've interviewed programmers or even people who are so good with companies, like big companies' internal tools that nobody knows anything about. So if you want to learn something today, and when watching this, invest in yourself and make sure your company uses something that can be carried over in your career. Right? Even if any staffs are watching this, right? Make sure to use things that you can, like reuse elsewhere. Transferable, because you don't want to be tied down in something that no one uses. Imagine if you are a master in this language called abracadabra language, right?
I can understand.
Outside of the world of abracadabra, no one understands you.
Exactly. No, I think like I agree that if you were to just stick to whatever and you believe, I mean not you believe, but like you just don't grow outside of your work, then I believe that your adaptability index or score is not high because you are 9 of 10 abracadabra, but the rest of the skills that maybe is related to abracadabra, you don't hone it. For example, programming itself, right now, if you learn the basics, you can transfer your skills to many other roles. So for example, if you're a web developer, I have students who become mobile developers, that kind of thing, right? So they are very adaptable in a sense like, okay, I can learn this. People who are blockchain developers are not blockchain developers. They were just web developers. And then after that, they learn the blockchain skills. They were adaptable. And the hype was
But that's
amazing.
because they are smart enough that they found a skill that they learn the fundamentals. But learning internal tools, let's say, if I learn, I don't know if this is a good example, but if I use WordPress today, and now you ask me to use a brand new tool, they're two completely unrelated tools, and I'm like, I have to
So I
learn a
guess it-
tool from
yeah
scratch
lah.
again.
Mm,
You know what
okay
I'm saying?
lah,
And
right.
WordPress is not even a good example because WordPress is so famous.
Yep.
Let's use something else. Like this company has its own version of a weird tool.
Fortran.
Whatever, right? Okay, so they have their own weird system, and I'm
Yeah.
a master in their huge. And don't think small systems. Think
No,
big,
right.
massive systems.
Yeah.
I'm a master in that system. Outside of that system, I'm a nobody. Don't talk coding, because coding is a fundamental skill.
It is,
It's
it
like
is.
riding a bike. You know how to ride a bicycle, then you can go to a motorcycle
Most
very
likely,
quickly,
yeah,
right? It's
yeah.
the same thing. You know how to walk, you can kind of run.
Okay, so then maybe paint me a picture. What is one skill that recently, right, no more already? Yeah. Yeah. Because right now, I'm not seeing it. Because most of the skills that right now, okay.
For example,
right.
architects who used to have to bend over on the table and draw.
Okay. So
You
they
don't do that. You don't do that anymore.
Right.
Right?
You have to use software,
Yeah.
right?
For example, you
basically.
use software.
Right. So if you don't use software,
So if you don't use software, you were from the 1950s.
you
You
are
don't
not
know how
in
to use
demand
software.
already lah.
Yeah. You just
Right.
lost your job, for example.
Right. So basically, like, I
Or
mean,
even in the near future, it's going to be even more. Let's say, for example, a cashier, for example. Very soon, even it's happening in China and a lot of these
minutes more.
countries, right?
Yeah.
In the US, let me start again. Like if you look at it, right? Cashiers, for example, in China or some other countries, right, where they don't need cashiers anymore. So what does this guy do? I don't know. You got to upskill yourself, lor. Got to find a way to
Exactly.
upskill and become better.
Yeah. So I think that.
Yeah, example, bad
Yeah,
example, but
bad
example, you can be a world-class cashier. But if you
True.
invested in that skill set for the past 30 years of your life, being a very, very, very good cashier, which, by the way, I know many people there are a lot of people out there, right, who has been cashiers for 30 years of their life, right? If they don't have the right mindset to diversify
Actually,
their skill set, they're
yeah.
stuck there forever.
Like maybe in the future, right? Like for example, food delivery riders.
Yeah,
Once
exactly,
once
100%,
transportation is automated,
100%.
right? They will be gone.
Yes. So they can try their best to game the Grab algorithm
Yep.
or maximize every single second on their drive, but fundamentally, when they're replaced, you got to start from scratch somewhere else. Even if you're a Grab specialist today,
Right.
Grab drivers, specialist or whatever.
You want 10 minutes more? We can do one more, or you,
Up to you.
up to you.
Yeah. Can I?
Yeah, so I guess that, for example, right, Grab delivery riders, you're a specialist. Taxi drivers, right? Taxi drivers are specialists, right? So the thing is that, because for me, I'm always thinking of like tech. So I'm
No.
never
Let's
seeing-
go out. Yeah.
yeah. But it's like fundamentally, you know, taxi drivers, you can drive. But then one day, you know, automated cars, self-driverless cars, which I believe will happen, will, you know, disrupt the whole industry. And that's where, yeah, it makes sense that being a specialist in driving cars,
Yeah.
it's not gonna make
So yeah,
you,
so it really depends on the
Yeah.
kind of domain that
Yeah,
you're in, lah.
industry,
And I
right.
think we need to admit that there's an inherent risk to being a specialist.
Mm.
Whatever a specialist means, basically it means you're doing this one thing and you're best at doing that one thing, and you've been doing that one thing for the past 30 years of your life. It means that you're a specialist. It's not bad. It just means that there could be a risk that if something
just a
happens
matter
in
of
this
time, right?
lifetime,
Yeah.
if you're unlucky and it happens in your lifetime, then it just literally means that you know, a lot of top company executives are like that, right? They are very good in their specific industry, whatever it is, doing their specific task.
Right.
And when a layoff happens or whatever, and they get laid off, they can't find a job anywhere else, right? It's different for software developers. I think you're a bit pampered to think about software developers
I
are
agree.
because of that skill that they have, right? Front end to back end is very similar.
Right.
Right. So that's different. But a lot of companies today, in fact, most companies have their own internal tools that you're forced to learn and forced to use. And if you become a specialist in just those tools, right? Then you're
Then
stuck there already, lah.
why do you think that
People do
maybe
that?
A few people, even when I talk to people who used to be business owners, they say that it's hard to get a job as a generalist.
Right. Okay. Do you know why?
Why?
Okay. If you look at this phrase, right? Too many.
Cooks.
No. Too many. Okay,
Managers.
it's a bit of a racist phrase, but I don't even heard of it.
No.
Too many chiefs, not enough Indians, something like that, or too many
Chiefs.
Indians, not enough chiefs.
Too many managers, not enough.
That's correct.
Right.
So if you look at it today, lah, right? I would say, in most companies, would you agree that the structure of a company is like one manager to 10
Yup,
staffs?
yes, I agree.
So by default, the ratio of a manager to a staff is like 1 to 10, 1 to
Yup.
100, whatever it is, right? One CEO to 10 general managers, 10 general managers to 100 managers, 100 managers to 1,000 executives, 1,000 executives to whatever, right? So there's a lot, it goes up that way. So obviously that means the hiring requirements, the hiring demand for general managers are a lot lower than the hiring demand. And most of the time, as we've both agreed already, that general managers are either T-shaped generalists or generalists. They are never really specialists.
Right.
We agree on that, correct?
Yeah.
So generalist suits those roles more. And that's why those roles are lesser in supply.
True. Actually, that's true.
And those roles usually take time to climb through the ranks to go up.
It takes many years.
It takes time as well to climb through the ranks. So you can be a generalist, but a senior generalist in the company. That's why it's harder to find a job as a generalist.
So the reason is because
entry level, you lose to people. You're not good enough at than specialists.
Yep.
Then you want to fight with specialists for those general,
yep.
and those roles are very rare. It's a lot more rare than
Basically, first you need experience in that particular
That's correct.
industry. Second is that it's super competitive because people
Correct.
who are specialists in the company are
Correct.
already fighting for that general.
Correct. Unless you're so damn good that your generalist skill, across the chart, you're 4 out of 10, right?
Right.
Unless your 4 out of 10 is as good as someone who's specialist, then that makes you scary. Because now you're a 4 out of 10, you're equal to other specialists, but you have a whole range of other skills that they don't have. And that's what makes you a very scary individual. And I think everyone should aspire to do that.
To be a generalist.
To be a T-shaped generalist. So your maximum one, your 6 out of 10, is the same as another specialist 6 out of 10. But across the board, this guy is 1 out of 10 across the board.
Right.
You are 6 out of 10 on the main skill, but 4 out of 10 across the board.
Then maybe you can answer this question, right? What are the skills of a, because most of
Sorry,
the time,
let me add one more thing.
okay,
Right? So
sure,
I want to add
okay.
one more point. It's about Pareto principle.
okay.
Heard of Pareto principle?
20-80.
The 80-20 principle,
Yeah.
right? So then your argument to me is, okay, if someone, it doesn't make sense, how can one guy be 4 out of 10 on, sorry, let me take it back. How can one guy be 6 out of 10 in one skill and then 4 out of 10 across the board?
Yeah, I know lah. But
Whereas another guy is 6 out of 10 on one skill and 1 out of 10 across the board, right?
Yeah.
It's because Pareto principle says that 20% of the work you put in gets 80% of the result, and then the remaining 20% of the result requires you to put 80% of the work in. So the scale to growth, to go from 0 to, let's say, the first level, like a junior engineer, is very fast. But for you to go from junior to world class, it's very, very fast. So 1 to 6 could be fast. So you got to put in only 20.
That is true.
You got to put in only 20% of your effort
That's
to go
true.
from 1 to 6. But to go from 6 to 10, it takes you probably 20 years to go there. Right. So instead of that, that's why there is a premium to being a specialist. However, if you're stuck in the progress from 6 to 10, you're a 6.5. I would rather than forget the 6.5, the 0.5, I'd rather be 4 out of 10 everywhere else.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Because
it makes sense.
the additional 0.5 means I'm sacrificing 4 out of 10 across the board, across 6 other skills, which is like, it doesn't make sense to me mathematically. I'd rather be decently good in one thing T-shaped, and then everything else 4 out of 10.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Pareto
right?
principle.
Yeah, because to be extremely successful, you need to take extreme measures.
That's correct.
And not many people want to go through the
100%,
extreme.
correct.
Right?
So
And I agree.
or the worst thing is you cannot reach the 10 out of 10 even after putting all this time. You cannot achieve it due to time, talent, or to be top first in the world. It requires not just hard work, it requires talent to a certain extent as well. Right. So if you lose on a certain extent, you'll be stuck on like a 8.5 out of 10, which means you only have one skill and you're not world class in one skill. You're good but not world class, and everything else across the board you're not well invested in, relative to another guy who has been investing the time consistently, becoming a 4 or 5 out of 10 across the board.
Yeah, I think that's pretty helpful because, like you say, from 1 to 6, pretty easy. 6 to 10 or 6 to 7, 6 to 8.
It gets harder.
It's damn hard.
It's an exponential
right?
curve.
Yeah. It's like you might be good in your area, but are you world class?
Yeah, correct.
Right?
Correct.
So it's drastically.
And if you're not world class, you're just a specialist. Like there are thousands of other
you're
specialists.
just
out
above
there.
average, or like too many people, but you're not like the world class, and nobody really cares about above average most of the time, right?
Correct.
And good point in that. So talking about I think most of us are specialists. I think most of us started with a specialist skill. Then what are the skills that you think can complement with most specialist skill?
I know, I have a perfect answer for that. You can add on to it later, right?
Yep.
For me, it's going to be some form of soft skill. Persuasion, sales, what else? I can't think of. Persuasion, sales, communication skills, and anything that falls within the realm of this communicative soft skills are things that you can, I wouldn't say easily pick up, but you can pick up on the side. You can practice daily. Because, what's the principle to get good at something? Practice, right?
Yep.
So if I say coding, you can't code if you have a full-time job doing marketing. You can't code, but you can learn how to speak more persuasively as a marketeer. You can learn how to speak more persuasively even as an accountant. So these
As a
small
software
soft
engineer
skills,
also,
correct. All these soft skills things are things that you can continue doing on top of whatever job you're doing now.
That's true.
That's why it's the best and one of the most important. Copywriting, for example, as well. You can train that. It's all negotiation, talking.
For those who don't know what's copywriting, it's basically talking or text that convinces people. Okay, continue.
Convince people to do something that you want them to do, right?
Exactly.
Copywriting, how do you phrase something, right? So all these kind of things are something that I think you should, whatever you're doing right now, accountant, nurse, lawyer, whatever you are, you should be investing in this kind of soft skills rather than say, okay, law and, let's say if I answered you coding just now, then it's two different things really.
So I would add on I agree that communication skills are actually pretty important. And why is it important is because we work with other humans and humans communicate, right? And if you're good at communication, then people will actually respect you more, to be honest. Like if you're able to communicate your ideas into something simple that people get it, that's one thing. Second is that social skills, I would say. I'm trying to be good at talking to anybody. Meaning, right, if I can convince an auntie, if I can convince someone who's a lawyer, I can convince a father, right? That it's such a good skill that you can practice to whoever. Like for me, I mean, how I practice it is in the lift, see who, say hi.
Wait, but just going, by the way, I agree with you, and that's something that I want to challenge myself.
Social skills,
That social skills and what you said just now, convincing a lawyer, is two different things. One is persuasion and one is communication. Or breaking the ice.
I guess it's like
anxiety.
the base, right, is communication. And then on top of it is convincing, right, or persuasion.
So what if there was one metric that you're trying to maximize
base
on?
Communication. Like, if you're able to communicate, like, what do you mean?
No, because communication is very broad.
Oh, why, right?
Persuasive, humorous. Because I think you're quite a funny guy. So I think you've already kind of increased your chance on the humorous side of
But
things.
if I were to go back, like, if in terms of like communication, right, I believe that first, I think most people can catch or work on is articulation. So meaning if you're able to articulate well in terms of how you're saying certain things, because sometimes I mumble, right? But like my job is teaching, so I got good at,
That's
communicating, right? So I think the base for those who are interested is to just make sure when you say something, people understand what you say. That's the base, right? And then once you have that base, persuasion will be actually much easier. Because if you can't communicate well to persuade someone.
Oh yeah, that's correct. So if we can break down this communication topic, right? I would say the whole your accent is another whole different ballgame, right?
Okay, I think accent is fine. It's just that how you
let me finish this. So this falls within the ballpark of technicalities, like how do you talk and say things well and clearly articulate well. But the whole persuasion thing is more on the soft side. It's like you gotta think. It's very different. You gotta form a deal for this person, get them. You gotta know game theory. You gotta understand decision making. How can we make them win? It's more thinking nature, right? But if you're good at thinking, but you talk like not very good, right? You will still struggle. So you gotta win across the board, right?
Exactly.
This is a good example of being a good generalist as well. If you're very good at doing humorous speeches, for example, that's good, and you can win a humor competition. But if I ask you to persuade someone to buy $1 million project, can you do it? You probably can't. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Yeah. So like, I think a very good communication, a very good skill for anyone to pick up, to be honest, is communication skill, because that will just elevate who you are as a person. No matter which industry you are.
That's correct.
Right? No matter you're tech, you're healthcare.
But people will say, oh, if I'm good at talking, no one's gonna hire me. What are you gonna say to that?
Bro, you know what's hiring? You're literally talking to someone.
Yeah, but I don't have the skills they need. They want me to be a specialist. What should I do now?
So the question is, they are not confident.
So I've listened to your advice, Haris, and I've maximized my talking skills now.
Right.
But this HR tells me that they want a specialist to do whatever work, accounting work.
And
they don't care how well I speak.
That one I really don't know how to answer. What do you think, Derek?
Be a T-shaped generalist. That's what I'm saying, right? Yes. So you gotta be a T-shaped generalist, unless you are a speaker, then different story. If you're a speaker, then go balls deep in your speaking
unless
career.
You love speaking.
Correct. If not, then I would still say focus on what pays the bill first today. So if you're an accountant, be good, decently good, right? 6 out of 10 good in your accounting job, and then across the board, be good at communicating, be good at everything else across the board.
And I believe, to be honest, even if you're not at a stage where you can get a full-time job, even part-time job, right, it's the best way to like practice your communication skills, right? For example, you're a cashier, right? How do you convince someone to like, upsell them? Because as a cashier, I believe you probably been told to your manager, hey, we have an offer. Can you help, make more like sales, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think like no matter which stage you are, even if you're not in like a full-time job, if you are able to, because right, I've been to a part-time job before, and people who are like respected, or people who enjoy working with someone is someone who can communicate and make like, their social skills are very good. Yeah, and I believe with these two, like, you can just elevate who you are as a person, no matter which industry you are. If you can make friends with strangers and you're able to communicate well, honestly, I think it's a huge win, right? Yeah. So
I would say being a good and strong person requires you to do extraordinary feats. Like you may feel overwhelmed now because you need to know how to do marketing, know how to talk, know how to sell, know how to do so many different things, right? I would say take it step by step, right? Treat it like a game. Give yourself a point across the board, right? Okay, right now I'm like, in terms of how I dress, I'm a 1 out of 10. In terms of how I speak, in terms of how I make funny jokes. And then you choose things that you want to optimize for, and then you start gaming it. But I would say focus on the thing that puts food on the table first.
Exactly.
Because if you can't put food on the table, you don't even have the mental clarity to focus on anything.
Exactly.
Right? So focus on that one thing. That's why T-shaped. Focus on that one thing that pays the bills first. Once you got something to pay the bill, let's say a job or whatever, right? Then you should decide, do you want to go deep in that job and be really good, really, really, really good, a top world-class person in that job? If yes, go ahead. By all means, I have nothing to say, because that's good. You get paid really well for that. But if you don't, and you're like me, and you're just a bit itchy everywhere, you want to learn different things, right? Then you need to start exploring and do it young. Don't drag it anymore, because the more you drag, the harder it is for you to start diversifying. And you heard of the concept of the golden handcuffs, right? The more you drag, the higher your salary becomes, the more and the sunk cost fallacy as well. The more time you spend in the role, the more you think that, okay, this is the path for you, the less likely you are to leave and to do your own thing. So if you want to, upskill yourself or do something else, you need to start now.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
Yesterday, in fact.
Yeah, or if you have time and you're listening to the podcast while you're working, great, thanks. But at the same time, I would say that, I think put the food on the table first, survive basically, and then once you have some time, maybe you can explore a bit in terms of like communication skills, and maybe be better at social skills during your job. Yeah, during your job is the best time.
It's the best time. You know what's the part that I miss in my life?
Why?
Because I never really had a job. So in my life, right?
Internship,
every not counted. Because internship, I all my internships I was doing very crappy stuff. So let's not go in there. Let's not go there. But all my life, I've been doing business, and the worst thing is every single mistake I've made, I got the bill. So if you're in a job, right, and your employer allows you to make mistakes, you need to take this opportunity to explore, because if you don't explore on your employer's payroll, you're going to be exploring yourself. So if any one of our team members are watching this is not me saying you shouldn't explore. You should explore, but my rule number 1 is make as many mistakes as you can. My rule number 2 is don't repeat them. That's it.
Exactly.
It's very simple in this company, right? So I would say make as many mistakes as possible, and if you're employed currently under the payroll of someone else, be responsible, but still do it now. Don't do it when you're running your own business, because it hurts. It hurts so much.
Because if you make a mistake in business,
it's you. You're the one. You're the one taking the blame and everything, right?
So I think for me, it's like I had the opportunity to be an employee, and I learned from the mistakes of my founders, and also my freelance. I freelance as well.
Right.
So I learned from the company that I work for.
Yes.
So
I never, man.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Like, I was paid to do mistakes and also implement my ideas in the expense of the company.
That's good for you, man.
So that's my, I would say, like, benefit in terms of being an employee. But it's just that, I took the plunge to be a generalist or do business, and that's where, like, I slowly, get better in terms of like being generalist, in terms of like, running an education, company and whatnot, right? So I would say, it really depends on who you want to be as a person, whether you want to be a generalist or specialist. To be honest, if you're obsessed with something, you're probably a specialist.
So if you could go back in time, Haris, would you be a generalist, or would you have done anything different?
Actually, that's a good question, and I don't really like to think about that kind of question also. Like, for me, I would say things happen for a reason, and I started out as I wouldn't know I'm a generalist. I prefer to be generalist if I didn't go through as a specialist.
You're right.
Yeah. So for me, I don't like to explore.
Arguably, you are not a generalist. You're a T-shaped.
I am
You
a
are
T-shape. Yes.
T-shaped.
Yeah. I'm not like a pure generalist.
That's correct.
That's confirmed.
I'm a pure generalist.
Yes,
We-
you're
we
a
sometimes.
you're a pure generalist.
I'm a pure generalist.
But it's
straight up.
like
I'm like 4 out of 10 across the board and everything.
But it's like I would say your growth is so much faster than me because it took me many years to be a T-shaped generalist.
Oh yeah, correct.
Right?
Like the whole Pareto principle thing, because you spend a lot of time.
in thing. Yeah, but it's fine because
It's fine.
that's how I grow. That's how I learn.
Yeah.
For you, it's just that you what about you? Okay, actually, what about you?
What about
yeah,
me, what?
what about you? Would you choose the same path?
Okay, see, the thing is, if I chose this, for me, it's a matter of having events that allow you to take the plunge. And if I miss those events, I wouldn't be who I am today. You know what I'm saying? Like the
Understand.
event that made me take the plunge back in the days was when I started my first business with Ming. It's called the Hacker Collective.
Yeah.
That was the event that made me take the plunge. And if I didn't take the plunge then, probably this business would be difficult to exist today because of the opportunities that like that someone was there to come. I'm not saying that he contributed strongly to this business or whatever, but this whatever I have today is because of the decisions I made in the past.
Exactly.
And if I did anything else, it would be a whole different story. And this we
Definitely.
can talk about multiverses in a different podcast.
But yeah, I would say that no matter what you did in the past, you can always choose whether you want to continue to be a specialist, a T-shaped generalist, or a pure generalist,
I
right?
think just remember your scoreboard.
Yeah.
If you think you are decently good enough already, and the more time you put in, don't equate to a good growth in your metric. Like let's say you're 6 out of 10 now, and you put in another 10 years, and you're still going to be 7 out of 10. Then it doesn't make that much sense anymore.
Yeah.
Or unless you're just someone who wants to just chill and enjoy life, then different story.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So just to be clear,
that's true.
that is perfectly fine as well. But this is the 1% podcast, so we talk about
Exactly.
being better. Like all we care about is being
Growth.
better. That's all
Yep.
we want, right?
Yep.
So I would say it wouldn't make much sense if you're going to stay in that career for another 3 years and your score in your skill is like 6 to 6.5. It doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
But with our company, we focus on always giving you the best tools to work on your job, right? We always,
Exactly.
like literally our team, all the time, we tell them, hey, whatever tools you find online, I want you to maximize it and use new tool stacks in the company to make you more productive and make us move 10x faster.
Exactly.
And they are learning every single day. I don't want there to be anything repetitive because the moment something is repetitive, it's just they're not learning, we're not growing. No one wins from this. So I rather they grow as individuals because now they become a more knowledgeable marketeer or developer, for
Exactly.
example. And for us, we're like, okay, once